remember that winter? The driving snow which half paralyzed Britain's countryside, the deep drifts where flocks sought vainly for shelter. No hint here of the golden summer which was to come. Operation Snowdrop was in full swing, with Navy helicopters answering the distress signals of Scottish farmers in need of food for man and beast, of fuel, of medical supplies. No time even to dream of summer. But for the drivers in the Monte Carlo Rally, speeding southward from Glasgow, the grip of winter merely added to the excitement of the game, though some fell by the wayside. To those of us who were caught without enough winter clothes, the January sales were a godsend, though some of us had to make do with whatever we could get. Even in the bitterest months, the tide of West Indian immigrants never ceased to flow. As they sailed in their hundreds to Britain in search of jobs, another traveller was flying to their homeland, Princess Margaret, a royal ambassador whose mission was to forge still closer the links between their country and ours. Not only in Britain did winter show its claws, the States felt the full force of its icy gales, and in Chicago the results were, to say the least, upsetting. Nature in winter can be a cruel enemy, but in summer too she has her terrors. This was summer in Australia, with the worst floods in the Dominion's history sweeping through New South Wales. Tens of thousands found themselves without homes as the waters poured relentlessly on. But disasters pass, and nothing could dampen Australians' interests in the preparations for next year's Olympic Games at Melbourne, where the cricket ground was being rebuilt and enlarged for the great event. Over to the Caribbean, where Princess Margaret's tour proved a great personal success for her. A generous people, quick to discern sincerity, the islanders took the Dolly Princess to their hearts from the moment she landed. Back in Britain, it was umbrella weather for the Grand National. But that couldn't keep the crowds away from Aintree, where thrills come so fast, only a slow-motion camera can see them all. Several jumps were made less dangerous for this year's race, but it's still a hair-raising 4.5 miles, where the most skillful jockey can come to grief. The Queen Mother's Matuvu carried the royal hopes, but the canal turn claimed him, and Queer Times romped home a 12-length winner. Another thoroughbred from a famous stable made its public bow, the Hawker Hunter Fighter, already in squadron service. A newcomer to the army was the 65-ton Conqueror tank, while in the small arms line came the Sterling gun, the automatic which refuses to jam even when it's been buried in mud. Strange things appeared in the aviation world. The flying bedstead, designed for experiments in vertical takeoff and powered with 2 jet engines. And another bit of aeronautical bedroom furniture, the flying mattress, a 500-weight contraption with a delta wing that's blown up like a rubber dinghy. An epoch in British political life came to an end when the Queen received the resignation of Sir Winston Churchill, Premier through the most critical period of our history. For the last time, he entertained Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh at number 10 Downing Street, which next day came the official home of the new Premier, Sir Anthony Eden, Sir Winston's loyal lieutenant for so many years. No easy task to follow such a man. Only newsreels and radio told Londoners of this historic event, for Fleet Street's presses were silenced by the newspaper strike, which had some strange effects on reading habits. Labour's Stormy Petrel, Mr. Narin Bevan, was in trouble again, but as always, the party forgave him. Highlight of the soccer year, the cup final, brought together Newcastle United and Manchester City. The City fought valiantly, but from early on, they were a man short through Jimmy Meadows' injury. Here's Newcastle smashing through for the final goal in their 3-1 victory. So Hannah crashed it home, and the Geordies were cup winners for the 6th time. What a team! Tyneside fans cheered themselves hoarse as Jimmy Schooler led his team up to receive the cup from the Queen. By Derby Day, summer had really come. 500,000 people watched a closely fought classic at Epsom. At Tattenham Corner, it was still anyone's race. But 2.5 furlongs from home, jockey Fred Palmer brought Phil Drake from nowhere to challenge Pan Slipper and snatch a breathtaking victory. The new Premier had scarcely taken office when his government sought a renewed mandate at the polls and got it. Of course, election night would be one of the summer's few wet nights, but Trafalgar Square was still packed and rang with cheers and counter-cheers as each result came through. Quite early in the night, it was clear that this was a Conservative landslide and that Labour's hopes of a return to power must be postponed. Hard on the heels of the general election came the rail strike. Footplate men, led by their General Secretary, Mr. James B.O.A.C, found that public sympathy for their claim was mixed with exasperation at their method of pressing it. But once it was over, tempers evaporated as we all concentrated on keeping cool. A cameraman's life was a pleasant one in those months, as long as he kept his sense of humour. What a summer it was for sport. But one world-famous event, the Le Mans 24-hour sports car race, was marred by a tragedy which cast its shadow over motor racing for the rest of the year. Pierre Leveg's Mercedes crashed and blew up, and blazing wreckage tore through the packed enclosure. In a few ghastly seconds, nearly 100 people died, the worst disaster in motor racing history. Since then, Le Mans danger spots have been reconstructed to prevent such things happening again, and many other European tracks have tightened up their safety rules. In the ebb and flow of the Cold War, the brightest moment was the Geneva meeting of the four heads of state. Marshal Bulganin, President Eisenhower, Monsieur Faure, Sir Anthony Eden. Much still divides us, but the ordinary man still hopes for an easing of tension. Certainly the welcome which Moscow gave to the visiting Wolverhampton Wanderers soccer team looked warm and sincere. Within the once forbidden Kremlin walls, Muscovites mobbed Billy Wright like a public hero. And London gave a hero's welcome to the Canberra jet bomber, which flew to New York and back between breakfast and supper, crewed by John Hackett and Peter Moneypenny. Happiest royal event of the year was just a local affair. The Queen and her family served at a sale of work in the grounds of Abergeldy Castle, the Queen Mother's Scottish home. It was in aid of nearby Crathy Church. Prince Charles played his part like an experienced salesman. Princess Anne did a roaring trade. With such a sales staff, it was not surprising that everything was sold in record time, and the Crathy Church was assured of enough funds for its new vestry. In sunny Cyprus, storm clouds were gathering. Union with Greece was demanded by 4/5 of the population, led by Archbishop Makarios. Britain opposed this because Cyprus is a vital base. So did the Mufti and his Turkish minority. To take charge, Britain appointed Field Marshal Sir John Harding Governor General. One highly successful contribution to international goodwill was an exchange visit between the British and Soviet fleets. A British squadron spent several days in Leningrad, while Portsmouth welcomed a Russian squadron. Sailors understand one another the world over, and every landlubber has a soft spot for them. So what better ambassadors could any country have? Gordon Pirry reached new heights by beating his friend and rival Czechoslovakia's Emil Zatopek over 5,000 and 10,000 meters, while the world water speed record was twice matched by Donald Campbell in his Bluebird. First on Ullswater and later on Lake Mead, Nevada, where he averaged 216.2 miles an hour. A triumphant end to a run of bad luck. Not long after Sir Winston, Mr. Attlee gave up the reins of leadership. His successor, Mr. Hugh Gateskill. And to crown the year, Comet 3 girdles the Earth to prove that her early setbacks are over and that she is the finest airliner in the world. Sydney is now less than 2 days away. So the world shrinks, and yet our horizons grow wider. Confidence has brought success and will bring us still more in 1956.